Good morning. It's Manager Critic Monday. It's the 23rd. No, it's not. It's the 26th of July 2021. And I am in wind down week, ready to take 2 weeks offline and 3 weeks out of the business. And also, to some extent, just 2 weeks away from family, responsibility, the house, etc. Now the plan and the intention is to go for 2 weeks camping. We've got a week in Norfolk and a week in Lincolnshire. And the house is taken care of, just in case anybody there, the nasty people on social media, there is somebody who lives here, so the house is not empty. Please know that. But even if lockdown changes things, even if I can't physically go away, those 2 weeks are absolutely, in my mind, they are the 2 weeks that I need to focus on different spaces, different mindset, different focus. So I want to talk today about why is it so difficult for some of us or some people to take time off. I also want to talk about why it's so important that we do it and some practical things that you can do to help yourself. So why do we find it so hard to take time off? Well, part of the reason, good morning, whoever's just joined us, do say hello. It's really nice to know that I've got somebody with me. Those of you who have read my book, you'll know the step one is curiosity, page 39, that chapter starts, and we talk about the triune brain. Now, whilst we know neuroscience has moved on, and if I did an update of the book, I would emphasize that this is not geographically, physiologically how the brain looks, but this is how the brain works. So as a metaphor, it's a really good resource to check in with yourself. So one of the reasons we find it so difficult to take time off is because it interrupts a pattern. So from a very basic point of view, the blue part of brain is the neocortex brain. That's what I call it, the clarity brain. My mentor calls it the learning brain. But that's the part of the brain that we need to be able to do creative thinking, to do problem solving, to have a different perspective of time, so to be able to perceive and forecast the future, to be able to perceive and reflect the past. So we need to be in that neocortex brain when we are thinking and problem solving, etc. However, when we're unsettled, when we don't feel safe, we will end up being in one of our survival brains. So we've got two kind of survival brains. We've got the reptilian brain, which also known as, we call it the red brain when we're in the academy. And in that part of the brain, that's about your flight, about your sort of basic survival stuff. So do you have enough food? Do you have shelter? Are you warm enough? Are you cool enough? So you're just physical needs being met. So if you think about how you talk about time, if you talk about time off being, oh, if I take any time off, I won't have enough money. If I take some time off, I won't get this, I won't have that. If you're talking about everything you won't get as a result of taking that time off, the reptilian brain is likely to think, oh my gosh, they can't pay the rent, they can't pay the mortgage, they can't buy food, etc. Now, I understand that sometimes that physically is the case. All right, that it will be putting you financially in jeopardy. But most often when we actually drill down to it, when I look at these things with people, it isn't actually the case. They often could go, when you look at, how long you'd have to leave your mortgage. I'm an ex-mortgage advisor. You would have to have missed your payments for 6 months, really, if not longer than that, before you'd actually really lose your property over your head. So you can miss payments and you can catch up. So that, the reality of it being like taking a few days off or a week off, actually taking your home away, is unlikely. In terms of food, again, you might change what you eat, you might buy differently, but the reality of taking a bit of time off and you not being able to feed yourself is unlikely. Now, if you are in that situation where you are really up against it, the other reality is we have to get ourselves back in a good state. So who do we need to talk to? Where do we need to get that help from? Because if we really haven't got enough food and our shelter over our head is in danger, the first thing we have to do is be able to settle that part of the brain, either by getting the help that we need to make that possible, or just changing the way that we talk about it. Because when we're in that survival brain, what will actually happen is our time perceptions shrink. Because when we're in a survival state, all we need to do is get out of this moment. So when we make decisions, when we problem solve, it's only to get us out of this piece of danger. It isn't going to be a long-term strategy or even a medium-term strategy. So making decisions when we're in a survival state isn't good for us long-term. It's only going to be a short-term strategy, which is often why sometimes we rant or get angry or whatever, because it's a short-term release and it gives us a relief, but it doesn't always do our relationships or our performance much good over time. So one of the reasons we don't take time off is if we're talking about it and it sounds like we're going to put ourselves in danger of losing our shelter or our food, then that would impact us. Even people talk about going abroad, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to eat, I don't know if I like the food out there. If you're talking about that sort of stuff, then there's a good chance that your system's going to go, oh, let's not go then, because you may starve to death because there won't be anything you like to eat. So that's one reason. The second reason, the mammalian brain, is the part of that brain is all about, am I safe in this group? And so what can happen is that part of the brain is pattern spotting. It's going, right, when Cheryl does this, this is what happens. When Cheryl does this, this is what happens. And it's checking the patterns, because what it wants to work out is the predictability of things that's going to happen. And the sole purpose is to keep us safe. And so one of the things about keep working is it's predictable. I know that if Cheryl gets up, she does this, she does this, and this is how the day is going to be. If she takes some time off, then she's going to get up. And I remember this as a single mum. I remember this as a recently gone self-employed. I'd book time off, but what I wouldn't do is think about what I wanted to do with that time off. Or sometimes what would happen is my ex-husband would suddenly say he'd have the children. It wasn't planned, it wasn't organised, so then they'd be gone and I'd be on my own. And I wouldn't have work necessarily to do, and I didn't have the children to occupy my time, and now I'm kind of like, what am I doing with my time? I see it with MTNS syndrome when children grow up and leave the home. I see it when people retire. All sorts of stuff happens. And so the brain likes things to be predictable because it likes to plan, unless you're somebody who loves thriving on adrenaline and likes the not knowing, in which case the story that you're telling yourself is that the not knowing what's going to happen is exciting and it's good for you, whereas those of us that are more sort of like routine and plans, we've convinced our brain that if we've got a routine and a plan, we're okay. So one of the reasons we don't take time off is because if we've got in the habit of working, the brain has got used to it. Whereas actually, if you train your brain to recognise that taking time off is okay, and more importantly, start thinking about what kind of break you want. It might be a 10-minute meditation every day. It might be half a day a week. It might be the whole of the weekend. It could be, I tend to do long weekends every 6 weeks. And I tend to have big chunks of time off in April, August and December. Otherwise, I tend to work quite long hours in between because I like what I do. But my system has got a bit of a rhythm. So my brain knows that this time off works. However, despite all that, I did notice a little bit of anxiety at the end of last week, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. You've got to be on social media, you need to be consistently showing up, you need to be doing this and this. And I was a little bit, it was starting to, my mammalian brain was going, are you sure that they're going to let you back in the group? Have everyone going to forgot you when you've gone off for 2 weeks? So I had a little bit of a talk to myself yesterday at the weekend and reminded myself that I've been doing this for 21 years, 14 of those have been online, and that people don't forget me that easily, that if I take a 2-week break. And in fact, quite often what happens is if I go quiet, it gives other people's system time to calibrate, time to reset, and then it gives them time to have a break from me and gives them time to process and learn. And when I come back, all energized and excited in a few weeks' time, we reconnect as though we haven't been parted. And I've seen that with family and friends that I haven't seen a lot because of the pandemic. We've met up in July, and it's like it hasn't been 18 months since we've seen each other. It's like we saw each other yesterday. And so I'm now telling my brain that story and reminding myself that that's what happens, so that I can go and take 2 weeks offline completely guilt-free, and I can take 3 weeks out of the business and it will be fine. But the reason we find it so hard is because the mammalian part of the brain is pattern spotting. And so it's really important for you to think about the way you talk to yourself and about yourself when it comes to time and time off, because that will influence whether your brain actually thinks you're going to be safe doing so. So please share below your time off stories. Tell us what works for you to take guilt-free time off. If you could have some time off right now, what would it be like? And forget the pandemic, forget all the things. Don't sort of shut your brain down. Get yourself up in that neocortex brain. Start thinking really creatively. If there was no limits and no bounds, what kind of break would you have? Because the really important thing is about really getting clear what the qualities of that break would be. So even if we were in lockdown, how could you recreate that? I remember last year, Mark and I took a few days out in the garden sunbathing with mocktails and reading our book, because we knew around that time probably what we would have done is had a beach holiday where we literally didn't really talk very much, we didn't really do very much, we just literally allowed our bodies and minds to rest. And so we took a long weekend and we did that in our garden. But you can't do that and if you don't have clarity of what you want, you don't have confidence in yourself in the process, and you also don't know how to talk to yourself and about yourself when you're going to put yourself through some kind of change. So I hope that's useful to you. Please share with me in the comments below your holiday plans, what you wish you could have if you're not having it, and let's have a discussion and let's see if we can support and inspire each other to take the breaks that we deserve. I've never worked with anybody yet on working out where confidence comes from or how people work, learn and live at their best where it didn't involve taking a break. But I have had to work with them to work out what they need to be confident to take the break. And it usually, not always, but mostly comes down to the way that you talk about it and how you help your brain predict and be okay with the change in your routine. So I hope that helps you today. Have a fantastic week. We'll be back online Friday morning, and then that will be me for 2 weeks. See you soon.